The soup had just started to cool when I heard the ping. At first, I thought it was just another group message. Maybe Ruth sharing photos of her grandkids again, or Daniel reminding me to lock the back gate. But it wasn't either of those. It was a TikTok link, sent from Layla, my niece, and the caption under it said, "This about you?" I tapped it. The video loaded slowly. Our internet's always been stubborn, and there she was, Maya, my daughter-in-law, her long red nails clicking as she stirred her oat milk latte, speaking into the camera with that chirpy tone she used whenever she was trying to sound innocent. "My Emil, useless?" "Guys," she giggled. "She just sits at home, like literally does nothing. We pay the bills, we cook, we clean. Like, what's she even for?" My hand tightened around the spoon. It wasn't the first time Maya said something slick. Little digs, quiet enough to ignore in the past. But this wasn't quiet. This was public. Over 50,000 views, hundreds of laughing comments, and a caption that read, #retirement life, #freeloader. Steam still rose from my bowl of chicken soup, curling up like it didn't want to stay in the room either. I looked across the table at the empty seat where my late husband used to sit. We raised Daniel right at this very table, fed Maya too. I sewed her wedding dress in this room, took out the back to fit her growing belly before the ceremony because she didn't want anyone to know she was already 4 months along. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. Crying would mean she'd won. Instead, I reached behind the spice rack and pulled out my old ledger. Soft, floral cover. Still smelled faintly of nutmeg and old hopes. I flipped through the pages, slow and steady, letting the numbers calm my breath. Maya didn't know this book existed. Daniel never asked. No one ever did. I looked at the soup again. Then I looked at the phone. Maybe it's time I told my side. I told myself not to look at the comments. That was my first mistake. They scrolled endlessly, like a swarm of mosquitoes, buzzing and biting in little digital stings. She sounds entitled. Lazy Mills are the worst. These boomers just want free rides. One of them just said, "Drain." I sat on the edge of my bed, the phone resting in my palm, as if it might apologize if I held it gently enough. The sun filtered through the lace curtains, drawing little patterns across the carpet. And for a moment, I wondered if this room had always felt this quiet, or if today was different. I opened the closet. Inside, hanging in a plastic sheath that had yellowed a bit over time, was Maya's wedding dress. I had taken it in and let it out twice, once when she was losing weight, then again when she started showing. She had cried when I handed it to her, told me I had golden hands. But that video didn't seem to remember those hands. Next to the dress was the red blouse I wore when we signed the final papers for Daniel's first apartment. I paid the deposit, even baked cookies for the agent. Maya never knew that. Daniel asked me not to tell her, said she'd feel weird about it. But I didn't do it to be praised. I did it because I'm a mother. Still, somewhere between my quiet contributions and their rising careers, I disappeared. I walked back to the kitchen and sat down with the ledger. I flipped past the pages marked market stall income, craft orders, and interest from tenants. The numbers were small, modest, but steady. I hadn't built an empire, but I built something that Maya and her viewers would never bother to see. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want followers, but I did want clarity. So I opened a new page in the ledger and titled it Truth. Not rage, not pity, just the truth. I once heard someone say that real power doesn't make noise. That's what came to mind as I sat in the kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound, flipping through my old ledger like it was a diary nobody thought to read. There were no big numbers, no flashy investments, just rows of clean handwriting and neat columns. Carrot sales, rent received, tailoring order, Mrs. Gunawan's kabaya. I remembered every entry, every face, every late-night sewing, every morning spent scrubbing the vegetable stall before sunrise. Nothing glamorous, nothing anyone would film, but it added up. The house Daniel lives in now, paid off, quietly. the loan he thinks his father covered. I covered half. From this ledger, I got up and walked to the key hook by the door. 4 keys. The first 2 were obvious: our home, Daniel's place. The third was for the little blue rental I still owned, the one I kept just in case. The fourth was rusted at the edges, my old shop. I hadn't used it in years, but I couldn't let go of the key. Not because I needed access, but because it reminded me I once built something. I held the shop key in my palm. It was heavier than I remembered. Strange how memories can add weight. That's the part Maya will never understand. She sees me as a woman who sits and cooks and prays. But before her, before TikTok, before smart TVs and soft-lit kitchens, I ran a business with 2 employees and enough customers to keep the lights on and Daniel in school. And I didn't need to tell anyone, because I thought love meant you didn't need to prove yourself. But silence lets people write their own stories about you. And right now, Maya was writing mine. I put the shop key back on the hook and opened the ledger to yesterday's date. I wrote 2 words in black pen. Steady hands, no shaking this time. Not useless. I waited until the sun dipped low before I sent the message. Did you see Maya's post? I kept it short, simple. I didn't want to accuse him. I just wanted him to know I was hurt, that it wasn't just noise on a screen, that it mattered. The 3 dots popped up, then disappeared. I stared at the phone. Nothing. Just that blank space where a reply should be. I placed it screen down on the table and pushed the soup aside, still untouched. I wasn't hungry. Not for food, not for apologies that wouldn't come. Across the room, the wedding photo still sat on the mantel. Daniel in his blue suit, Maya in the dress I altered with my own hands. I remembered pinning her hem just hours before the ceremony while she giggled, "You're better than any tailor in town." Back then, her voice felt warm. Now it echoed cold through that video. I stood up and walked over to the photo, wiped a bit of dust from the frame with my sleeve. In that picture, I looked proud, peaceful, like I had done something right. Maybe I had. But somewhere along the way, right started looking like weakness. Daniel had always been soft-spoken, a listener, the kind of boy who didn't like confrontation. He got that from his father. But there's a difference between being gentle and being absent. And tonight, he chose absence. I walked back to the table, picked up my spoon, and dipped it into the soup. 1 bite, just one. It was cold, bland, hollow, like chewing silence. I pulled the ledger closer and flipped to a fresh page. If Daniel couldn't speak for me, I would. If Maya could go viral for lies, then maybe I could go quiet for the truth. I didn't need followers. I needed facts, receipts, records. I didn't plan to argue. I planned to demonstrate, and this time, I wouldn't wait for permission. Maya's smile always had edges. I just didn't see them at first. She called me Mama from the beginning, helped clean the dishes after her first dinner here, even offered to fold Daniel's laundry. She knew how to charm a household. I welcomed her with open arms. And maybe that was my mistake, because over the years, her sweetness started sounding rehearsed. A few weeks before the video, she brought over a manila folder. "Routine stuff," she said, setting it next to my tea. "Just some updates on the house, insurance things. You don't need to worry." I remember her voice, tight with sugar, the kind people use when they want you to agree without asking too many questions. I didn't sign it. Something in my stomach tugged. I told her I wanted to read through it later. She laughed, said, of course," and then casually mentioned that she and Daniel were thinking of streamlining things. That word caught me. Streamlining. That's what you do with clutter, with obstacles. That same day, she asked if I'd thought about downsizing, said she saw a cute little senior community out near the toll road. "So peaceful," she said. "No stairs, just 1 floor. Perfect for you." I nodded, but I didn't say yes, because something in her eyes wasn't peaceful. I walk into my sewing room now, a space Maya never liked. She called it old-fashioned. I open the closet and pull out the wedding dress. My fingers traced the hem I once stitched while she whispered thanks. Back then I thought it was gratitude. Now I wonder if it was calculation. She wanted to erase me before she moved me. And the video? That was just the beginning of her excuse. If I was useless, she could nudge me out. Maybe she thought no one would care, that no one would ask questions. She thought I'd stay silent. She doesn't know the kind of woman I used to be, and she sure doesn't know who I'm about to become. It wasn't just the video that burned, it was the group chat that followed. My phone lit up every few minutes. Cousins, nieces, even an old church friend weighing in, screenshots, laughing emojis. Someone even said, "Wow, Maya really said the quiet part out loud." I didn't respond. I just watched the messages pile up like ash. There was no defense. No one said, "That doesn't sound like Auntie." No one asked if I was okay. They just reacted, like I was a trending topic, not a person. Even my sister Clara wrote, "Guess you've been enjoying retirement, huh?" Retirement? I've never retired. I just stopped explaining what I do. I closed the chat, locked the phone, and walked over to the stove. The same bowl of soup sat there from earlier, covered now with a plate to keep the flies out, still warm from the reheating, still untouched. I took the bowl and sat with it at the table, spoon in hand, and I thought about all the things Maya never saw. The 4 a.m. wake-ups, the sewing needles that left scars on my fingers, the months I skipped my own meals so Daniel could eat meat twice a week. I wasn't always this quiet. Once, I knew how to push back, with precision, not shouting, not insults, just clarity. That's when I thought of Mr. Kareem, a friend of my husband's and our family's lawyer for over 20 years. He was the one who helped me buy the blue house, the one Maya doesn't know about. I rinsed my hands, wiped them dry, and dialed his number. "Mrs. Hartati," he answered. "It's been a while." "I need your help," I said, quietly. He didn't ask why, just said, "Come in the morning, bring papers, bring everything." I hung up, the phone warm in my hand. My soup had cooled again, but I felt heat rising in my chest. They thought I had nothing. But I've always had something they didn't. Records, receipts, and a memory that doesn't forgive easy. Mr. Kareem's office smelled like old wood and eucalyptus tea. Nothing had changed. The same dusty trophies lined the shelf behind his desk. A brass plaque still read, "Justice without noise." I always liked that about him. He didn't speak more than necessary, but when he did, people listened. I placed the floral ledger on his desk, next to a stack of old property documents and a manila folder filled with payment stubs, receipts, and photocopies of bank transfers. He didn't look surprised. He adjusted his glasses and flipped through the pages slowly. "She called you what?" he asked, eyes never leaving the paper. "Useless," I said. His lips pressed into a line. He turned another page. "I don't want to sue her," I said quickly, "and I don't want to embarrass Daniel. But I also won't be pushed out of my life." "You don't need to shout," he said calmly. "You just need proof, and you've got it." He tapped the ledger with the back of his pen. "This," he continued, "tells the story she doesn't know how to read." I nodded, even though a small part of me still trembled, not from fear, from the weight of finally being seen. He flipped to the back of the folder. "The blue house, still in your name alone?" "Yes." "And this rental agreement, no co-signers?" "No one but me." "Good." He closed the folder with a soft click. "You're not in trouble. You're just misrepresented. So let's correct that." "How?" I asked. "You don't clap back," he said. "You educate, calmly, clearly. Post the truth, but don't let it bleed. No insults, no rage, just receipts." "And what if they try something legal?" I asked. "Then we're already ahead," he said, pushing the folder toward me. "But don't sign anything they bring. Not a napkin, not a birthday card." I managed a small laugh. Outside, the sky was soft with clouds, the kind of gray that settles before a storm. I tucked the folder back into my bag, and as I zipped it shut, I realized I wasn't scared of the storm. I was finally ready for it. It hung in the back of the sewing room closet, wrapped in a clear plastic cover, just as I had left it after the wedding. Maya's dress, lace along the sleeves, satin stitched to fit curves that changed overnight. I had pulled and reshaped every seam by hand, using measurements she gave me only after whispering, "Don't tell Daniel yet. I'm a little further along than we told everyone." I didn't judge her. I didn't hesitate. I simply said, "We'll make it fit." And I did. I spent hours under the dim yellow lamp, threading needle after needle, my back aching, but my heart full. I had never felt closer to her than during those weeks. She laughed in my kitchen. She cried when she saw the final fitting. "You're like a second mother," she told me. That dress was the first time I felt like I belonged to her family, not just Daniel's. But now I couldn't even look at it without feeling something sour rise in my throat. I unzipped the cover. The fabric still smelled faintly of lavender, probably from the sachet I'd tucked in the folds. The stitching had held perfectly, not a thread out of place. All that work, all that care. And for what? To be labeled useless in a 30-second clip? My fingers grazed the neckline, and I suddenly realized something was gone. The pin. A single pearl hairpin, once my mother's. I had given it to Maya just for the ceremony. Something borrowed. She promised to return it. I never asked again. Life got busy. Then Daniel got the promotion, then the baby. And now, nothing. Gone. I stared at the dress, and for the first time, I didn't feel proud of it. I felt used by it. I zipped the cover closed. Slower this time. The dress was still beautiful, but it no longer belonged to memory. It belonged to evidence. Not of betrayal, but of misalignment. A relationship sewn too tight in places that needed room to breathe. I placed it back in the closet, and this time, I didn't whisper goodbye. I didn't want to go viral. I just wanted to stop disappearing. The ledger lay open on the table, its pages curled from years of use. On the left, handwritten totals from a lifetime of effort. On the right, an empty page, space for something new. I opened my phone and scrolled until I found the video again. There she was, Maya, sipping her latte like the world owed her applause. "She just sits around," she chirped. "We do everything." My thumb hovered over the screen. I watched it twice, then a third time. Each replay stripped it of sting and left behind something colder. Strategy. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment mistake. This was the soft launch of erasure, and I wasn't going to let it finish. I opened a video editing app, basic, clean, no music, no flashy transitions, just Maya's video cropped to her face, then a cut to a black screen. I typed in white text. "Useless? Here's what quiet work looks like." Below it, I added a simple line. Net worth, 3.1 billion IDR. That was it. No hashtags, no sob story, no face, just fact. I pulled the camera from the drawer and placed it gently on the table. If Maya wanted the internet's attention, she could keep it. But now, she'd have to share the spotlight. I turned back to the ledger and added a line beneath today's date. Prepared response. Calm. Documented. My hands didn't shake this time. I looked out the window. The sky had turned a deep purple, the kind of dusk that swallows the world in stillness. I stared at the post button on the screen. It wasn't about proving her wrong. It was about proving I had always been here. Quiet doesn't mean absent, and invisible doesn't mean irrelevant. I took one deep breath, then lifted my thumb. I didn't wait for likes. I didn't wait for comments or DMs or validation from strangers. I simply pressed post and laid the phone face down beside the ledger. The room was still. Even the fridge seemed to stop humming, like the house was holding its breath with me. I stood up and walked to the mantel. The wedding photo was still there, but this time I didn't look at their faces. I opened the small drawer beneath it. Tucked behind a stack of old birthday cards and dried lavender was a folded slip of paper. The funeral text from my husband's service. I'd read it hundreds of times, but one line always struck me. Protect what we built, even from our own. Back then, I thought he meant outsiders, scammers, predators. I never imagined it would mean someone who wore our name, who ate our food, who laughed at our table. I placed the folded paper back and looked up at the clock. Tick! That old wall clock hadn't missed a beat in 15 years. Gift from my brother. It ticked when I brought Daniel home from the hospital. It ticked when Maya said, "I do." And now it ticked after the quietest war I'd ever started. I sat back down and traced the edge of the ledger. So many years, so many entries. I had never posted a selfie, never filmed my meals, but I built a life that mattered. And now, whether they liked it or not, they'd have to see it. The comments would come, the reactions, the assumptions. But that was noise. The signal was already sent. I reached for the soup again, third time reheating it. Still bland, still mine. I lifted the spoon, and this time I swallowed every drop. Not because I was hungry, but because I had done something brave, quietly, deliberately, and I needed the strength for whatever came next. I woke up at dawn like always, but that morning the silence felt different. I made tea. Jasmine. The scent floated through the kitchen as the kettle hissed its little song. I didn't look at my phone. I wasn't ready yet. Not because I feared backlash, but because I wasn't in a rush. The repost wasn't a scream. It was a mirror, and mirrors take time to crack or reflect. I sat by the window with my teacup and the ledger in my lap. A beam of soft morning light spilled across the table. Dust danced in it like little ghosts, reminders of all the mornings I'd sat here unnoticed, unwitnessed. But not today. When I finally unlocked my phone, it buzzed so hard I almost dropped it. Notifications. Hundreds. Thousands. Comments like, "Queen. This is how you clap back without shouting. My mom did this too. She deserves a damn medal." And then messages. Private ones. From women I didn't know. "I cried reading your post. I thought I was the only one invisible. You just gave me courage to speak to my daughter. I'm going to start my own ledger. Today." I blinked hard and read them again. Not because I didn't believe them, but because I couldn't believe they believed me. I didn't post to be famous, but somehow I'd become visible. That's when the knock came. 3 soft raps. Hesitant. I didn't need to look through the peephole. I opened the door, and there he was. Daniel. He hadn't shaved. His eyes were tired. He held his phone in one hand, like it weighed more than it should. "Mom," he said, voice cracking like he hadn't used it in days. I stepped aside without a word. He entered slowly, like the house might scold him. We didn't hug. Not yet. He sat down at the table where the tea still steamed. And I waited, for the first words to mean something. The tea between us had gone lukewarm. Daniel sat with both hands wrapped around his cup, like he was afraid to let go of something. Maybe his version of the story, maybe his excuses. I didn't speak. I wanted to see if he would. Finally, he did. "I saw it before you did," he said, voice low. My heart thudded. I asked her to take it down. I told her it wasn't right. He looked at me then, eyes wet but unspilled. She said it was a joke, that people wouldn't take it seriously. "They did," I said. "I know." His thumb rubbed the rim of the cup. "I didn't think it'd blow up like that. I thought, if I stayed quiet, it would go away." I studied him. My son. The same boy who once cried when a classmate called me old. The same boy who used to kiss my hand after dinner. "Silence," I said softly, "isn't neutral." He dropped his gaze. I turned the ledger toward him, letting his eyes fall on the column marked Support Payments. Each entry a number he never knew about. School fees. Grocery supplements, furniture deposits. I never told him, never needed to, until now. His throat bobbed. "You never said—" "You never asked," I said. He nodded, shoulders slumped. We sat in that wordless room for a long time. Just 2 people who loved each other, hurting in different directions. Then he whispered, "Is it too late to fix this?" I wanted to say no, but I didn't. Instead, I stood and poured us fresh tea, because forgiveness, like tea, needs time to steep. And some truths taste bitter before they settle sweet. I hadn't opened the jewelry box in months. It sat untouched in my bedroom drawer, next to a packet of sewing needles and a bottle of perfume I rarely used, one of those gifts you save for something special, but never quite reach for. I opened it that afternoon, not because I needed anything, but because something was tugging at the back of my mind. The moment I lifted the lid, I knew. The ring was gone. A single pearl set in a delicate gold band. My mother's ring. She gave it to me the day I gave birth to Daniel, told me, "Give this only to someone who knows what it means to carry a family." I had loaned it to Maya, just once. She had asked if she could wear it for a reel, said it matched the dress she was promoting. "Just a quick video," she'd said. "I'll bring it right back." That was 3 months ago. I never saw it again, and shamefully, I hadn't thought to ask. I stared into the box. The ring's indentation was still there, a small circle pressed into the velvet like a ghost. In its place sat a folded note. Not a message, just the paper insert from the perfume bottle, meaningless, like a cheap stand-in for something precious. I lifted it and smelled it, hoping for a clue. Just perfume. Sweet. Shallow. Like Maya's apologies. It wasn't about the ring's worth. It wasn't even particularly valuable. But it meant something. And Maya treated it like a prop. I sat on the bed, hands in my lap, pulse rising not with rage, but with grief. There are betrayals that shout, and there are betrayals that sit in velvet boxes, silently proving everything you feared was true. I didn't call her. I didn't demand it back. I wrote it down. One line in my ledger, in the column titled, "Trust. Mother's pearl ring, borrowed, never returned." And beside it, in smaller print, so much like the rest. I spread everything out on the dining table: bank slips, property deeds, school payment records, utility bills with my name printed in crisp black ink. It was all there, decades of quiet contributions that no one had ever asked about. The house? I paid the down payment. Daniel's first car? A no-interest loan I never asked to be repaid. Groceries during their first year of marriage? Covered half, sometimes all, during those just-until-we-settle months. I made photocopies of everything, labeled each folder. Living expenses, me. Daniel's education, covered. Rental income, ledger verified. It felt clinical, detached. But beneath the paperwork was something pulsing, something hot and alive. Then I found the loan, a thick envelope in the back of the drawer, clipped together with a faded sticky note in Daniel's handwriting. "Just temporary. Maya said not to worry you." My stomach dropped. It was a 6-figure loan, co-signed by Daniel, requested by Maya, taken out against one of the rental properties in Daniel's name. Property I had bought, quietly, in cash. Years ago, I had trusted him. He had trusted her, and she had trusted no one but herself. I didn't scream. I didn't call. I made a copy. Then I opened the ledger and made a new section. Shadow transactions. Loan signed without consent, verified. Ring never returned, noted. Verbal agreement ignored. Maya. It wasn't just about dignity anymore. This was risk, real, financial risk. I wasn't angry at Daniel. I was disappointed in how easily love could become leverage. But I wasn't afraid either. The paperwork, neat and complete, gave me something solid. You can't argue with ink, and you can't erase a mother who kept every receipt. I made soup, again, same recipe, same pot, same bowls I've had since Daniel was in high school, slightly chipped at the edges, but still strong. 3 bowls, 1 for me. 1 for Daniel, 1 for Maya. I set the table with care. No candles, no speeches, just warmth and silence, waiting to be filled. Daniel arrived first, shoulders still slumped like guilt had weight. Maya came 10 minutes later, wearing soft pink lipstick and that influencer smile. "Smells amazing, Mama," she chirped, as if nothing had happened. I gave her a small nod and gestured to her seat. She set her phone on the table, face down, but I could see the screen light up every few seconds. Notifications. Always working. We ate in near silence. Daniel finished half his bowl. Maya barely touched hers. I didn't force anything. When the dishes were cleared, I brought out the folder. Maya's eyes narrowed just slightly. "I want to talk," I said, voice calm. "But first, I want you to see what's real." I slid the documents across the table. Rental deeds, loan copies, bank transfers, a photocopy of my mother's missing ring from an old family album. My ledger sat beside them like a quiet witness. Daniel stared at the paperwork, lips parted. Maya smiled, small and tight. "This isn't necessary, Mama." But her hand twitched toward her phone. She picked it up and turned it toward herself, lifting her voice just slightly. "Hey guys," she began. "So, we're sitting down, having a really important family moment, and—" I reached over without a word and turned the phone around, camera now facing the stove. She froze. The steam still rose from the soup pot, quiet, steady, not for performance, not for content, just nourishment, just truth. "This isn't content," I said. "This is my life." Maya blinked fast, but said nothing. Daniel looked at me, really looked, for the first time in weeks, and I let the silence speak. Because not every story needs a hashtag. Some just need a witness. I never raised my voice, not once. But the silence that followed was louder than any scream. Maya lowered her phone slowly, screen now dark, charm fading around the edges. Daniel shifted in his seat like a boy caught between two mothers. "I want to be clear," I said. "This isn't punishment. This is correction." Maya crossed her arms but kept her smile. "Of course. Totally understand. We're just figuring it out as a family, right?" I met her gaze. Steady, unshaken. "There are 3 things," I said. "First, the loan. I know about it. I have the documents. You will repay it, quietly, in full." Her smile cracked just slightly. "Second, there will be no more videos. No filming me. No using my name or image for content. Not for apologies, not for redemption arcs. I am not your storyline." Daniel opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "Third," I continued, "the trust will not be touched. My lawyer is aware. Everything remains sealed until the appropriate time." Maya's lips pressed together in that tight line she used when she wanted to cry without ruining her makeup. "This feels really cold, Mama." "No," I said. "This feels clear." Daniel looked between us like he wanted to build a bridge, but knew the river had already risen. "I've loved you both," I said. "But love is not the same as permission. You crossed a line, and now I'm drawing one." Maya reached for her spoon, stirring the cold soup as if that would distract from the heat in the room. "Of course," she said. "We'll do better." But her eyes flicked back to her phone, and that's when I knew she hadn't changed. She had just paused. I stood, picked up the folder, and walked to my room without another word. Sometimes dignity isn't about being louder. It's about knowing when to leave the table, especially when the meal's already gone cold. I didn't plan to post again. Not after the repost, not after Maya's meltdown, not after Daniel's hollow apologies over cold soup and slower hugs. But the messages wouldn't stop. Older women, quiet ones, invisible ones. My inbox overflowed with stories just like mine. Ledgers kept in plastic sleeves, rental notes scribbled in margins, cash envelopes tucked under mattresses. "I didn't know I was allowed to be proud," one message read, "until I saw you." So I opened the camera again. No makeup, no filters, just my kitchen table, my floral ledger, and my voice. "This isn't advice," I said into the lens. "This is memory." I flipped to a fresh page, showed how I saved from tailoring, how I used the envelope method before the apps existed. How rent from the Blue House, small as it was, paid for Daniel's final year of university. How a bowl of soup can stretch when you know how to stretch your pride. No rage, no names, just facts. I titled the video, How I Quietly Built My Life with No One Watching. And I posted it. By sunset, the comments began again. Not gossip, gratitude. I started my ledger today. My granddaughter helped me make a spreadsheet. I thought I was alone. I sat back in my chair and looked around the house. No applause, just stillness. But this stillness felt earned. Not silence imposed, but peace chosen. I walked to the drawer, placed the camera inside, and shut it gently. Some women shout to be heard, some whisper, and start an avalanche. Tonight, I needed no noise, just the knowledge that someone out there finally looked at her own hands and thought, I am not useless, I am enough. The first time Maya came back after the video, she didn't knock. She breezed in with the air of someone who still believed she was the center of every room. Her heels clicked too loudly on the tile. Her perfume, sweet and synthetic, lingered long after she passed. Daniel followed behind her, slower, quieter. I stayed seated at the table, folding laundry, neat piles. Soft shirts, order where there had been noise. Maya dropped her purse on the counter and crossed her arms. Well, she said, I hope you're happy. I looked up. Excuse me? I've lost 2 sponsorships this week, she snapped. People think I'm a villain now. They're sending me hate. Do you even know what that's like? I didn't answer. She kept going. I said one thing. One, and you had to turn it into some viral pity parade. Why couldn't you just let it go? Daniel cleared his throat, but she waved him off. I stood and walked to the sink, rinsing the last cup from lunch. My hands were steady. I didn't ask for attention, I said calmly. I asked for respect. You humiliated me. No, I said, turning to face her. You did that to yourself. She blinked. The mascara had started to smudge beneath one eye. As she turned to storm out, her shoulder brushed the key hook on the wall. The shop key rattled softly against the others. She didn't notice, didn't know what it meant, didn't care. And that was the difference between us. Daniel lingered at the door. Do you want me to talk to her? I folded the last towel. No, I said. Let her sit with the silence for a while. He nodded. She's scared. She should be, I replied, but I didn't mean afraid of me. I meant afraid of being seen for who she really was. Truth has a way of peeling off the filters, and this time I wasn't handing her another lens. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't announce it with a post or a message or a family group chat update. I just packed 2 suitcases, lifted my ledger from the table, and locked the front door behind me. The little blue house waited like it always had, quiet, clean, untouched. It smelled like wood polish and forgotten time. I had kept it for someday, without knowing someday would arrive on a Tuesday morning without fanfare. I placed the ledger on the windowsill and opened the curtains. Sunlight spilled in like warm water. I let it hit my face and closed my eyes. No Maya, no tension hanging in doorways, no eyes watching to judge or misunderstand. Just light. Just me. I unpacked slowly. The tea set my husband gave me on our 20th anniversary. A jar of dried jasmine. 3 envelopes marked for Daniel, for emergencies, and for me. And the wedding photo. I didn't hang it, but I didn't throw it away either. I placed it in the drawer by the bed, face down, like a page I wasn't ready to reread. By late afternoon, the soup was simmering. The curtains swayed in the breeze. The blue walls, though bare, felt like a hug I didn't know I needed. I wasn't running away. I was moving toward something, a life that didn't need to be proven, a peace that didn't ask for permission. I sipped my tea slowly, the scent rising soft and familiar. I hadn't felt this kind of quiet in years, not the kind you suffer through, but the kind you choose. From the kitchen, I could still see the key to the old shop hanging on a nail. I'd brought it with me. Not because I needed to open the door again, but because it reminded me that I once did. I used to build. I still could. And maybe now I would again. Just not for them. This time, for me. I heard it before I saw it. A soft shuffle at the door, then silence. I waited a moment, heart steady. No footsteps, no knock. Just a single white envelope slid halfway across the threshold, like a secret too ashamed to be delivered face to face. I picked it up. No return address, just my name typed in all caps. Inside, a letterhead I knew well. Formal, polished, cold. Notice of intent to contest, trust provisions. The word swam for a second, not because I didn't expect it, but because I had hoped, somewhere deep down, that Maya might choose dignity. She hadn't. She had regrouped, shifted strategy, and once again decided that if she couldn't control the story, she would try to rewrite the ending. I sat at the small kitchen table, the sun falling gently through the window. I read every line slowly. No panic, no tears, just a growing sense of confirmation. She wasn't done with me, but I was done with her. I folded the letter neatly and placed it next to the ledger. Then I picked up my phone. One by one, I blocked her on everything. Phone, Instagram, TikTok, email. Not out of anger, out of clarity. You don't leave the door open for someone who keeps trying to burn the house down. The blue house was mine. The peace inside it was mine. And I intended to keep it that way. I opened a drawer and pulled out a small stick of jasmine incense, lit the tip until it glowed, then let the smoke curl upward, soft and slow. The room filled with memory, with old mornings and new breath. Not a funeral, a cleansing. I wrote one more line in the ledger. Attempted contest, received, recorded, resolved internally. And beneath it, peace protected. I didn't expect the hallway to smell the same, lemongrass and dish soap. Faint traces of Maya's diffuser still clinging to the air, like a memory that hadn't realized it was no longer welcome. The door was unlocked. Daniel was alone. He looked thinner, older somehow, not in his face, but in his posture, like something inside had been sitting in the rain too long. "I didn't think you'd come back," he said, gently closing the door behind me. "I'm not back," I replied. "Just passing through." He nodded. We sat in the living room, where birthday candles once flickered and the couch still bore the dent from late-night movie marathons. Between us sat a silence thick with all the things we hadn't said. "Maya's staying with her sister," he said finally. "She says it's temporary. I don't know any more." I didn't ask for more. If he wanted to talk, he would. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out the ledger. He looked at it like it might crumble in his hands. "I don't need that," he said, voice low. "It's not about need," I said. "It's about understanding." I placed it in his lap. He didn't open it. Not yet. He just held it, gently, like it might bleed if handled too roughly. "This isn't proof," I said. "It's history. Yours too." Daniel looked down, his thumb brushing the frayed edge of the floral cover. "I'm sorry, Mom." "I know," I said. He started to cry then. Not loud, not messy, just quiet tears that slipped down like small truths finally leaving the body. I didn't see it. I know. He exhaled slowly, like he was exhaling years. I stood, kissed the top of his head, and walked to the door. "When you're ready," I said, "you'll understand what it took to keep this house standing." Then I left, not with sadness, but with something better. Release. The mailbox at the Blue House doesn't get much use. Bills go to my email now. No flyers, no junk, just the rusted red flag still lifting every now and then, like a small salute from the past. But this morning, there was a letter, handwritten, no stamp, delivered by someone who cared enough to walk. I opened it at the table, a jasmine candle flickering nearby. "Dear Ibu, I saw your video. I shared it with my mother. We cried together. Then we went to the market, bought a notebook, and started our own ledger." I paused, hand over my chest. She said she hadn't felt proud of herself in years. Now she teaches me what she saved, how she stretched, how she made something from nothing. You reminded her she wasn't invisible. You reminded me she was extraordinary." The letter ended simply. "Thank you for speaking up so we could sit down together." No name, just an initial. R. I folded it slowly, placed it beside my ledger. It sat there like a second book. A mirror, a map. Proof that even the softest voice can travel. I poured tea, the steam curling gently upward like the first line in a story yet to be told. Maybe I had lost something. A version of family. A version of peace. But I'd gained something else. Connection. Truth. A lineage of women who now knew they were never useless, just uncelebrated. And that was finally changing. The invitation came on plain paper. No logo, no glossy ink, just a folded note from a woman named Boo Rani, who ran a community co-op in the next district. "We hold a circle every month," she wrote. "Just women. We share skills, ideas, recipes. Would you come speak?" I nearly said no. I wasn't a speaker. I wasn't an expert. I didn't wear blazers or walk stages or use microphones. But I looked at the ledger, and I thought, maybe I didn't need to be any of those things. Maybe just showing up was enough. I arrived with jasmine tea and the ledger tucked under my arm. The community center was small, painted blue like my house, with plastic chairs and a floor that creaked softly under careful steps. 15 women, ages ranging from 20 to 70. Some cradled babies, some wore aprons. All of them carried something invisible. "I didn't prepare a speech," I said, holding up the ledger. "But I brought this." I opened it to a page from years ago. Tailoring notes, petty cash, rent receipts. "This is how I kept my family together," I said, quietly. They leaned in. One by one, they began to share. A woman who made tempeh from scratch to pay school fees. Another who grew a garden that kept 4 families fed. A widow who saved coins in a jar behind her rice bin. We weren't trading stock tips. We were trading survival. When the tears came, they were soft. When the laughter followed, it was loud. Loud in the best way. At the end, I passed around the ledger. Hands touched it carefully, some calloused, some trembling, some young, unsure, eager to learn. It wasn't a book anymore. It was a bridge. Before I left, Boo Rani pressed a small envelope into my hand. "Just a thank you," she whispered. "I didn't open it until I got home, sir." Inside was a note. "You helped us remember we were never background characters. We've been building the stage all along." And this time, I cried. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. I was just setting down the tea tray when I heard footsteps on gravel. Familiar, slower than they used to be. Daniel stood at the gate, holding a frayed backpack and a plastic bag, with eggs, instant noodles, and 2 mangoes. I opened the door before he could knock. "Hey, Mom," he said, eyes tired but softer. "Hungry?" He nodded. Inside, he took his shoes off without being asked. Placed the groceries on the counter like it was still his kitchen. In a way, it was, but this house was mine. "I moved out," he said, sitting carefully at the small round table. "I figured," I replied, pouring tea into 2 chipped cups. "She didn't take it well," he added. "She rarely does." We sipped in silence. Then, without prompt, he asked, "What was it like? When I was small? When you were doing all this?" He gestured to the shelf where the ledger now sat, closed and calm. I studied his face, the boy I raised, the man I tried to protect from the weight of how things really worked, I told him. About sewing late into the night while he slept with his arms around a stuffed giraffe. About turning down invitations because the rent envelope wasn't full yet. About pretending to forget my own birthday so he wouldn't feel bad for having nothing to give. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. And when I finished, he said only this: "I'm sorry it took me this long to see you." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "It's okay," I said. "Some things have to be felt before they're understood." He looked at the ledger again, eyes tracing its floral cover. "Can I read it?" "Start with the first page," I said. And we sat there, just us. No performance, no post, just a mother and her son, turning pages back to the beginning. And maybe starting something new. The kettle whistles now, and I don't rush to silence it. I let it sing. Outside, the frangipani tree blooms again. White petals scatter across the yard like shy blessings. The sky is the soft kind of blue that feels like forgiveness. It's been months since the repost. Maya never reached out again. I heard through Layla she's rebranding. Less family, more skincare. Daniel visits on Sundays. Sometimes he brings mangoes, sometimes questions. Last week he asked how to calculate compound interest on a rental deposit. I laughed so hard, I almost cried. The ledger sits closed now, spine slightly cracked, pages worn but whole. Beside it lies a fresh notebook, blank. Not for defense, not for debt tracking, just for ideas, dreams, recipes, maybe even a few secrets. Sometimes I get letters from women across the country. They send photos of their ledgers, their hands, their jars filled with folded bills and courage. One woman wrote, "You reminded me that I am still becoming." That one I pinned to the fridge. Today I'm making soup, not because I need to, because I want to. Because food, like truth, is best served warm and shared slowly. As I slice carrots, the radio hums, a soft song from long ago, one I used to dance to in the kitchen when Daniel was just a baby on my hip. Back then, I thought survival was quiet. Now I know it's a symphony. I didn't set out to teach anyone anything. I just refused to disappear. And maybe that's the most radical thing an older woman can do. The soup is ready, the table is set, there's no performance here, just a woman, a bowl, and a life that mattered. Quietly, fully, completely.